Let's talk about power yours, because the moment you recognize how much control you actually have in the face of someone who thrives on manipulation, control, and ego, everything changes. This isn't about revenge. It's about reclaiming your energy, your confidence. Your narcissists don't just want attention. They need it. They feed off chaos, off your doubt, off your silence. But when you know exactly how to interrupt their patterns, their power starts to crumble. This is about strategy. It's about standing in truth so firmly that their tactics stop working. You don't need to fight louder. You just need to be smarter. Narcissists thrive on attention. It's their fuel. Every compliment, every argument, every glance you give them reinforces their sense of control and superiority. What most people don't realize is that both positive and negative attention feed a narcissist. They don't need you to love them. They just need to know you're focused on them. Your emotional reactions are proof that they matter, that they're in control of your mental space. So the first and most effective way to destabilize their power is to starve them of what they crave the most, your attention. This doesn't mean ignoring someone in a passive aggressive way. It means you stop centering them in your life. You stop adjusting your emotions, your energy, your decisions based on how they might react. You no longer engage in circular conversations that go nowhere. You don't chase after closure from someone who is never going to give it. The less you respond, the more powerless they feel. And for someone whose identity is built on controlling the narrative, nothing is more maddening. When they push your buttons, you don't push back. When they bait, you don't bite. You don't try to win the argument or prove your worth. You don't explain yourself over and over, hoping they'll finally understand your perspective. You simply remove the supply, because without your emotional investment, they're left with silence. And silence to a narcissist is terrifying. It makes them question their relevance. It challenges their illusion of superiority. The key here is consistency. You can't starve a narcissist of attention for one day and expect them to unravel. They'll test you. They'll provoke you. They might love bomb or guilt trip or play the victim just to pull you back in. But when you maintain your detachment, not in bitterness, but in power, they lose their grip. They can't control what they can't access. And that drives them absolutely insane. This doesn't mean being cold or mean. It means being emotionally unavailable in the way that matters most. It means choosing peace over performance. It means refusing to let them script your emotions. It's not about winning. It's about refusing to play a game that's rigged from the start. When they realize they no longer live rent-free in your mind to panic, they might escalate for a while. They might seek other sources of supply. But the moment you stop reacting is the moment you stop feeding the cycle. You break the loop. You stop giving them what they used to stay inflated. You reclaim they never wanted King Du to realize you had. Control over your own attention. Setting unbreakable boundaries with a narcissist isn't just a recommendation. It's a necessity. Narcissists don't recognize or respect healthy limits. To them, boundaries are either a challenge to overcome or a threat to their control. They will test them, manipulate around them, and gaslight you into thinking your boundaries are unreasonable. That's why yours have to be non-negotiable, unapologetic, and consistently enforced. A weak or wavering boundary only tells a narcissist one thing: they can still get in. Most people set boundaries from a place of emotion, hoping the other person will understand, empathize, or change. But with a narcissist, boundaries must be rooted in logic and reinforced with action. You can't ask for permission to protect your peace. You don't need their agreement. You simply state what is acceptable to you and act accordingly when that line is crossed. No drama, no debate, explaining yourself 20 times. Boundaries are not discussions, they're declarations. Narcissists thrive on enmeshment. They blur the lines between their wants and your needs. They'll intrude on your time, your space, your privacy, and your emotions. They expect immediate responses, endless tolerance, and access to your life regardless of how they treat you. That's where firm boundaries disrupt their strategy. When you say no and mean it, they can't manipulate your time or energy as easily. When you end conversations that become abusive, you're signaling that you value yourself more than their opinion. When you decide who has access to you and under what terms, they're forced to confront the one thing they hate most on: your autonomy. The hard part isn't setting the boundary. It's maintaining it when they push back, because they'll guilt trip you for being selfish, accuse you of abandoning them, or suddenly act sweet to make you question yourself. This is where your clarity matters. You're not being unclear. You're not punishing them. You're protecting yourself. And once you draw that line, you stick to it, even when it's uncomfortable, even when they try to make you feel like the bad guy. Boundaries aren't about controlling the narcissist's behavior. They're about controlling your response to it. You may not be able to stop their toxic patterns, but you can absolutely stop allowing those patterns into your life. You're allowed to hang up the phone. You're allowed to not respond to a text. You're allowed to cancel plans, end conversations, or leave the room. You don't owe anyone unlimited access to your energy, especially someone who consistently abuses it. Every time you enforce a boundary, you're sending a messaging you will not be manipulated, guilted, or coerced into emotional servitude. You are all not responsible for their reactions. You are only responsible for maintaining your own standards. When they realize their usual tactics don't work on you anymore, it throws them off balance. They may lash out, they may double down, but the longer you hold the line, the more power you take back. You're not being difficult. You're being deliberate. You're not being rude. You're being real. The gray rock method is one of the most powerful tools you can use when dealing with a narcissist. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, and that's exactly why it works. Narcissists feed off your emotions, your anger, your sadness, your confusion, even your joy. As long as they can get a rise out of you, they feel relevant. So the strategy here is simply you become as emotionally uninteresting as a gray rock. Boring, bland, unresponsive. You don't give them anything they can use. This doesn't mean being passive or submissive. It means being strategically disengaged. When they try to start an argument, you give short, neutral responses. When they insult you, you don't flinch. When they brag or try to you into reacting, you don't validate it. You strip your interactions of the emotional energy they're looking for. The goal is not a win. The goal is to stop playing. You are no longer their entertainment, their target, or their emotional outlet. Narcissists are experts at creating chaos. They'll provoke you with subtle digs, backhanded compliments, or outright aggression just to see how you respond. If you argue back, they win. If you cry or explain or beg, they win. But when you respond with disinterest, monotone voice, minimal eye contact, no emotional charge, they lose access to the reaction they crave. And without that reaction, they start to lose control of the situation. This tactic works best when you're in situations where you can't cut them out yet, like co-parenting work or family dynamics. You're not feeding the fire, but you're not trying to put it out either. You're just not reacting to the heat. You're giving nothing for their ego to feed on. It's not about being rude or cold. It's about being emotionally detached. You still communicate if necessary, but only with facts and minimal emotion. You become unreadable. And for a narcissist who depends on reading your emotions to manipulate you, this is deeply frustrating. The challenge with the gray rock method is internal. You may feel fake, robotic, or unnatural at first. That's normal. You've been trained to respond, to defend, to explain. But this isn't about being authentic with the narcissist. It's about protecting your emotional bandwidth. The more you practice, the easier it gets. Over time, your nervous system starts to calm down around them because you're not engaging in the same exhausting emotional loops. They may try harder at first, escalating behaviors, pushing harder for a reaction, trying new angles. That's part of the process. Their tactics will evolve because they're losing grip. But you stay consistent. No matter how dramatic they become, you remain emotionally flat. Eventually, they start to realize they're not getting what they want from you. You're no longer the source of drama, validation, or chaos they're looking for. You become a gray rock, unmoving, uninteresting, unshakable. Narcissists rely on your need for external validation. They exploit your desire to be seen, heard, and understood. They know exactly how to withhold praise, offer backhanded compliments, or create confusion about your worth. Over time, you start to second guess yourself. You question your instincts, your decisions, your identity. That's where they gain control by making you dependent on their approval. One of the most effective ways to dismantle that power is to stop looking to them for validation and start giving it to yourself. Self-validation is not just about positive affirmations or feel-good quotes. It's about grounding yourself in reality, in your values, in your truth. It means acknowledging your feelings without needing someone else to agree with them. It means recognizing your accomplishments even if no one else claps for you. When you validate yourself, you stop waiting for permission to feel confident. You no longer need their recognition to believe in your worth. That alone weakens their hold over you. The narcissist control thrives on your doubt. If they can make you feel small, they can make themselves feel big. If they can keep you chasing their approval, they keep you distracted from your own power. So the shift begins with choosing to believe yourself over their version of you. When they say you're too sensitive, you recognize that your emotions are valid. When they dismiss your needs, you hold space for them anyway. When they try to define your value, you remember that they don't get to be the author of your identity. This kind of validation doesn't mean you never make mistakes or that everything you feel is always correct. It means you trust yourself enough to check in first. You ask, what do I think about this? What feels right to me? It's about building an internal compass that doesn't get thrown off every time one disapproves or disagrees, especially someone whose pattern is to manipulate, twist, and deflect. Exposing a narcissist without emotion is one of the most powerful things you can do, not because it humiliates them publicly, but because it strips away the illusion they work so hard to maintain. Narcissists are experts at crafting masks. They present themselves as charming, charismatic, generous, even humble when it serves their image. But behind closed doors, they can be manipulative, cruel, and calculating. What they fear most is being seen for who they really are, with the emotional chaos they usually rely on to distract and deflect. That's why the key to exposing them lies in neutrality. No yelling, no crying, no drama, just facts calmly stated. When you react emotionally, they flip the script. They'll call you hysterical, unstable, or vindictive. They'll twist your pain into evidence that you're the problem. But when you speak the truth composure, when you describe what happened without embellishment or rage, they lose control of the narrative. You don't need to convince anyone. You don't need to explain every detail. You just state what's true and let the silence do the work. People can feel when something is real, especially when it's not clouded by emotion. This approach isn't about revenge or smear campaigns. It's about revealing patterns calmly and clearly. You might say, he tends to belittle people when he doesn't get his way. Or she often uses guilt to avoid accountability. You're not attacking, you're observing. And that observation, especially when repeated over time or confirmed by others, starts to crack the narcissist's image. The more they react emotionally to your calm delivery, the more obvious the truth becomes. People begin to notice the difference between your grounded presence and their erratic defense. Exposing doesn't always mean going public either. Sometimes it's one-on-one. Sometimes it's about naming the behavior in the moment with no emotional charge. That comment felt like manipulation. I don't respond to threats. I noticed you change your story again. You're not arguing. You're not escalating. You're simply interrupting the script with honesty. And narcissists hate honesty that can't be twisted. It's important to remember that this kind of exposure is for clarity, not control. You're not trying to make them admit anything. You're not waiting for them to finally confess. You're shining light where they prefer shadows, and you're doing it without giving them the emotional fuel they thrive on. They might lash out or try to discredit you. That's expected. But your power comes from your steadiness. You're not retaliating. You're revealing. And in environments where image matters, like the workplace or within social circles, that calm exposure is far more damaging to their control than any loud confrontation ever could be. By removing emotion from your truth, you rob them of their favorite weapon, the ability to provoke and manipulate the narrative. They can't use your anger against you if you don't give them any. They can't twist your words when you keep them simple, factual, and firm. This level of control doesn't just shake them, it unsettles everyone they've fooled. Walking away from a narcissist like you never look back is not just a physical act. It's psychological warfare. Narcissists expect you to linger. They expect you to question your decision, to miss them, to feel empty without them. They rely on your emotional attachment, your hope for change, and your fear of starting over. When you detach and disappear without a dramatic exit, you dismantle one of their core beliefs that they are unforgettable, irreplaceable, and in control of your emotions even after the relationship ends. The power in walking away lies in your silence. You don't send closure texts. You don't leave doors cracked open. You don't explain your healing process to the person who caused your wounds. Narcissists feed on drama and attention, any kind. If you leave with emotional explosions, they'll spin it as instability. If you're looking for understanding, they'll wear that as a badge of control. But if you leave quietly with your dignity intact, they lose their grip completely. It's not just rejection, it's irrelevance. This kind of exit requires preparation, especially if the narcissist has embedded themselves into your daily life. They might be a partner, a boss, a friend, even a family member. You don't need to announce your decision in grand fashion. You simply start removing your energy. You detach mentally before you detach physically. You stop reacting. You stop explaining. You stop trying to be understood by someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. And you go, and when you're ready, not out of bitterness, but out of clarity, aftermath is where the true test begins. They might hoover, sending messages, acting like they've changed, pulling out every trick to make you doubt yourself. They might turn others against you or play the victim in a story they control. But your job isn't to manage their reaction. Your job is to keep walking. No looking back, no checking their social media, no responding to bait. You don't return to a fire just to prove you got burned. You let the silence speak, fluff. What rattles a narcissist the most is not losing access to you. It's losing their power to affect you. When they realize they can't make you cry, beg, or rage anymore, they feel invisible. And to someone who built their identity on being the center of your universe, that invisibility is unbearable. They expect it to haunt you. But when you walk away like they never existed, like they no longer occupy space in your mind, you challenge their entire sense of importance. This doesn't mean the process is easy. There might be grief withdrawal, even moments of doubt, but your actions don't reflect your pain. They reflect your decision. You rebuild in private, you heal in silence. And while they might be watching, waiting for a sign of weakness, you give them nothing. Your strength is not in how loudly you leave. It's in how completely you remove them from your life, your energy, your future,